Thinking Native, 11 Insights for 2011, with your host Saul Kropman from The Digital Edge.
My name is Gabrielle Rosario, and I'm lead social strategist at Native.
What does that actually mean?
It means that my job is broken up into 3 different parts. It's about 70% is on strategy, about 20% is on social interaction design, working with the interaction designers, and then 10% is on any new product development. Social strategy, my objective is to have an ad insight on all of the strategies that go out of Native, and all of those strategies that will inform creative and development.
Cool. Let's talk about social media, because that's what we're talking about today. Where is social media at? What are we looking forward to in 2011?
Volume, well, I would say, with the statistics and the adoption in South Africa, I would look at volume first. New users, people that are joining for the first time because suddenly they have access through their mobile phones or whatever the case may be. I just think that what we can look forward to is volume. That's it. And with volume means that we have bigger reach and we have better reason to justify what we do.
You say volume as a good thing. Is that correct? Is it not a case of more almost unqualified leads? It's all good to have more people, but are they necessarily quality people? They seem to be more late adopters and we don't necessarily want to market to them.
Well, the non-user might not have been a case of not being an early adopter. He or she might not have just had access. I think South Africa's environment is very different because of that one reason. And as that opens up, then those people who are not on doesn't make them redundant or insignificant. It just means that, they're on for the first time and maybe they're a better market.
What platforms are there that are exciting you for 2011 in terms of social media?
Well, let's just call it development in general and look at the South African market. I would and looking at what's happened this year. Obviously, I am paying very close attention to MoTribes and their success so far, and look forward to seeing what they're going to be doing on a global scale. So absolutely, that would be my number one. I'm interested to see how Evely turns out from a South African context as well. I think that it's borne the brunt of a lot of criticism up front. Some of it, in my opinion, unwarranted, because you've got to develop to criticize. I think that's going to be an interesting one to watch. I must admit, I think that there's going to be a point of fatigue or exhaustion. How many social networks can you have? How much of this stuff can you manage? I need a PA just to manage my social media. But that's the truth of it. I think from a global level, we're sitting with Facebook and Twitter. What's the next big thing? I don't know. Obviously, there's a lot out there, and maybe it's a case of he who makes the loudest noise. And then lastly, I think that what we'll definitely see more of is curation platforms. So people that go off and do the dog's body work for us, and they will be very niche orientated, independent publishing platforms, but not necessarily content generators or originators themselves.
They're aggregators more than anything else.
Yeah, they're doing it, and then you can select your interest thread and just get somebody else to do the scouring and rabbit holing for you.
With regards to the traditional platforms, as we're going to start calling them now, the Facebooks and the Twitters, which a year ago was revolutionary, do you think marketers are going to be focusing still on those, or will they be moving towards things like Foursquare or the new kind of sexier platforms?
In the South African context, I stick by our originally branded, now Native principle: be sexy with the simple. In the South African context, adoption of Foursquare and platforms such as that is low, and that's obviously because of broadband, or at least access, should I say. The ones that will succeed are perhaps not as sexy visually, but are adopted by the masses. So obviously Mixit is one, but when Facebook places launches here, obviously it's on BlackBerry already, but when it launches here, I think that will be a turning point and a big mark, and I think everybody's kind of got their mindset of first mover advantage. What great campaign can we develop around places? But it's a wait and see game.
Well, that kind of brings us back to your fatigue concept. Do you think Facebook's going to be that one social network to rule them all in 2011?
I think it will continue to be in 2011, particularly again in the South African market. You know, the numbers here compared to the numbers overseas are still low. So there's still a lot more people to get onto Facebook. I have no reason to think that they would join another network instead of Facebook, because all of their friends are already on Facebook already. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to go and, you know, obviously there's your niche networks like One Small Seed or something like that. But yeah, I think that for 2011, it's going to be a stabilizing year and a volume year.
Well, even those niche social networks, I mean, would you recommend someone launches a new social network in 2011?
From a niche perspective, I think that there's a lot of advantage. And obviously brands are going off and creating networks or SNSs around not necessarily the brand, but the interest groups of people. Where success will be, I think, is fluid integration. You know, make it easy for me as a user to add this and see what's happening within Facebook as well. So I think that if brands or independents do start social networks, yes, there will be around a very specialized interest, which is great. But then integrate it with my other platforms, and please make it one button interaction and integration.
Let's just quickly go on to social interactive design. Maybe for those who don't know, what exactly is it, besides for spending 20% of your time on it?
I think that it's a new principle, or it's a new term. When I say new, about 4 years old. It falls under the umbrella of interaction design, or at least obviously that whole arena is highly contested, and there's a lot of debate about what comes first. But the principles of it are that you are designing and thinking for groups of people. So what is the standard human behavior and group dynamics that inform just real world interaction, and how can you apply that thinking into the online interaction scenario? And I think a big word there is enhance. How do you enhance a real-world experience online? Not for one user and one user journey, but for the collective, for me and my friends. And that's the one side of it. And then obviously there's the interface design side of it. So it's enabling me through tools and techniques to be able to share and collaborate, and that's essentially what it is.
So how does that link into a social network, for example?
I think from a functions and features perspective, it's looking at it from a group perspective. So why am I joining as a user? Because my friends are there, and then it's that path of being able to connect with people. Maybe it's connecting with somebody else's group on one click, and that instantly adds me to their network without having to go and manually add individual users as my friends. So I think that that's from a social networking perspective. It's and the development of social networks. It's constantly thinking en masse instead of as an individual.
Let's go back to social media in South Africa. You know, there's 500 million people on Facebook internationally. What kind of numbers are we looking in South Africa?
All right, well, it's a difficult measure, as we know, but we're looking for Facebook specifically, latest stats, and yes, they obviously can be contested, and I'm happy with that. But we're looking at about a 7.03% of the total population of South Africa on Facebook. And then if we mull around there in the arena, we've obviously got to consider LinkedIn, YouTube. I would even perhaps put mix it into that bracket as well. The only reason is because unlike Skype as an IM platform, Mixit obviously has brands on their IM platform, so that's why I would include it in that space. But yeah, I mean, let's not also forget the smaller South African social sites, and that's Zupi, Blue World, and others. You know, Thunder even. You know, they all need to add to that basket. So yeah, I think what we understand of it is it's around 7 to 8%.
That's quite substantial if you consider the fact that there's, say, 10% internet penetration.
Yeah, it is. And I think what's also interesting is that around 65% of the total population that use internet in South Africa are using social media.
Let's look at it from the perspective of a marketer for a second. Where on earth do I put my brand then?
Well, I think the space, the way that we approach things is really methodical. We give a client what we call a baseline strategy, and that's thorough, and it almost serves as their digital, what we call DNA, and helps inform whatever campaign activity that they're doing on top of that. For me, the space to be playing in, and particularly in South Africa, is how can you be different? And that's a tough one because that's subjective. So yeah, I think that it's really a case of, from a brand perspective, having the guts and applying the budget and really looking for that point of difference.
But from a segmentation perspective, where would you put what, essentially? You know, there's so many social networks, there's quite a large fragmentation in South Africa alone. If I was trying to reach, say, for example, a young adult population, where would I put my message?
Facebook, number one. That's a no-brainer. For most of my social career, I've always kind of been quite precious about having a consistent message, and I've been really challenged on that this year. I don't know why I like it, but I do. And the space that we're playing in now is contextualize the message to the medium and contextualize the campaign to the medium. So just because you've got one overarching campaign, it doesn't mean that it can't have different legs and a different voice within a particular network. So you can spend less money in something if you feel that you'll have the reach, but perhaps it's not the same way that another user would see the brand in another space, even if it's digital media, even if it's advertising. So a brand could be really different within Mixit, really, and not be running the same campaign. So it's fragmented thinking. It's not necessarily saying, right, we're running this campaign and we're going to be doing, breaking it up and having exactly the same execution within each medium.
You mentioned campaigns a lot. Is social purely campaign work, or is it more of a utility type concept?
Definitely not. I think that the space that we're playing in at the moment is how, and this is, as I say, with volume, and the return that we'll see is how we will see social impacting business. And already we see it with our clients, obviously tracking and measuring mentions and being able to analyze that. We're able to go back to specific retailers and say to them, this is the sentiment towards that particular store, and if we drill down a little bit deeper, we can actually see that that's the problem with it. And are you ready, adaptable? Do you have budget aside? Can you respond quickly? Can you make that change that will positively impact your business? So I think the answer to that is, don't underestimate that this space is able and will challenge not the marketing strategy or the comm strat, but your business strategy. And for business owners and not just marketers out there, it's about listening. And I've always said, if you don't have any online reputation management running, then you're deaf.
But obviously the problem is social media goes beyond just online reputation management. What kind of expected return can I get as a marketer for my social campaigns? Would it be sales of products, people going to my website? What can the general return be?
Well, I think that as I said, we put that baseline strategy together, which covers things like your brand voice. It covers things like your service delivery. What you're looking at is how do you field queries or mentions that can improve your business. So there's the service side of things. There's lead generation, definitely. But then there's also brand building. So it would be your consistent brand build and then campaigns on top of that. I think that the return is also seen in numbers. You know, we still acknowledge that an integrated campaign works best, where your traditional media and this is why it's so important for social thinking and social media to be at that initial table when you're considering your brand strategy, is integrating it in such a way that there is a feedback loop into the space, because otherwise you're losing people. And the numbers game, I think that the brand, we do have Facebook fan pages in South Africa with over 100,000 users, but the brand that receives over, and not a media brand either, not a huisgenoot, but the brand that receives over 100,000 users on Facebook, I think maybe we'll see that in 2011 if somebody has the guts to pull out a really phenomenal campaign.
You mentioned how it's mostly used for brand building at the moment. Do you think in 2011 it'll become a case of lead generation and a way of actually bringing new customers in rather than just having them, say, for example, like your brand?
We understand that the reason for drop-off is a lack of content within any social space. It's a lack of content and also deals. And I think that's not what we're not seeing here yet, is systems that enable the brand to integrate with their retail outlets, which is a tough call. I mean, I understand that retailers are sitting there. I kind of get the sense that retailers are sitting there waiting for each other to make a decision, or waiting for the masses to come and inform what technology they need to integrate with their POS, for example. The second that we get systems that will better manage, control, and moderate and enable a brand to translate and turn a query into a sale, that's the headspace we need to be in. So it's looking at your lead generation process. If there is a mention, or if you are going to hijack somebody else's brand and offer a special deal, what is the mechanic for doing that? Do you have ad hoc budget to support that? Are you fielding the query through a really simple form that resides on your Facebook fan page? What is the means to do that? And I think an example of a company that does this really well is ASOS, which is a UK retailer, online retailer, and every South African woman's dream. It's awesome, except, it's awesome. ASOS is very clever because they've conditioned their user base to expect deals, and they release deals on a Friday, 20% off, Facebook only deal, and all you get is a simple word. It could be Facebook heels. And when you are on your ordering form, you type in that word and you get the additional 20% discount. So it's such a simple mechanic, but they've integrated it. And I don't think our brands are there yet, except for Woolworths. With their Christmas campaign, they've added the online shopping element. There is drive back through the product. They've shown the different SKUs. And I think that particular activity was really carefully thought out and well done. So I think systems, mechanic, and thinking about it from the back-end perspective, not just from development, but how to work this into your systems is where brands and owners of businesses need to be thinking. I'm
kind of getting the impression, though, it doesn't matter how much money you pump into Facebook or Twitter or any social campaign. The simple fact of the matter is the company needs to want to change or work with those social platforms to succeed. Yeah,
I think that it's a case of massaging the medium. It's really about buy-in from high level, top level, and then it's about understanding that this is an organic process that you have to monitor and baby and be involved in, and also be responsive. Timing, I think, is everything. If we've seen anything this year, thanks to Old Spice, it's about timing and being responsive. And I think that a South African example of that is Williams Hunt. I mean, it's like surprise and delight, or random acts of kindness, or whatever you want to call it. Williams Hunt went out and assisted a person on Twitter whose car had broken down. That's awesome. The fact that they were listening, responded, and then received the positive feedback from her. The fact that AA was dissed in the process as well says a lot. But my caution to brands there is, what is the sustainability of that? Can you keep it up? If you're going to go out there and start raising consumer expectations, can you maintain that? So I think responsiveness and having a responsive attitude, a yes attitude, a let's see if this works attitude, is critical for this medium to succeed as a brand.
But does it have to always be something expensive and over the top, like the example you just gave us?
Was that over the top?
Going out to save someone, I suppose, is unusual.
No, maybe not. Maybe it's simply a case of cheering somebody up using technology, like that call service in the US where you add your phone number and they phone you to tell you that you're awesome every day. Maybe it's something as simple as that, and that's not an expensive execution.
Sure.
So, no, it doesn't have to be. But I think it's about, having a producer. When you're, obviously with our model, we have community moderators that sit very closely with the brand, and those moderators' jobs with the producer, when a campaign is live, is to be responsive. And it's very difficult when you turn to the brand and say, we've seen this, we think there's opportunity, what can we do? And there's silence because budget has been allocated, or I think it's really about attitude and having the right person within the brand and the marketing team to say, let's allocate, even if it's a small budget, let's allocate this as ad hoc for campaign activity and being responsive. So
you would recommend that be someone who runs digital inside the company who reports to, say, Brandish, for example?
It's a contested area. Overseas, what we're seeing a lot of is that social media belongs to the whole company and everybody should be bought, they should be buying from everybody, and it's about your employees, and there shouldn't be a social media third party. And in some ways I agree, because nobody knows your brand better than within the walls of your brand. But in other ways, I disagree. We have seen and come with expertise from 4 years of managing people's online presence, and there is a lot of IP in that, and there is a lot of tacit knowledge, the nuances of the medium that simply going on and not having a content plan would be a first major fail. It's knowing what to do and how to do it, I think, is the starting point. We do a lot of workshops up front with clients to build that baseline strategy, and their involvement of, a critical success factor for that is having the right people in the room and the right people around the table. So when we're talking about lead generation, we've got the call center and service and sales people within that room, and they're telling us how their systems work and how we can help make it work with them.
And inside those companies, what is the perception of social media? Is it a case of, 15 years ago, everyone was desperate to get a website? Is it a case of everyone's desperate to be on social media now?
I think that what happens is that, and what we see a lot of, is that they were calling it converting the man years ago, is that you have one individual, or perhaps an individual and his assistant, who see the potential and who see the opportunity, and who are selling it within their own walls. And it's very encouraging when you see somebody in a higher level of management turn around and say, okay, so I see the value in this. Let's apportion some of our budget to it, and let's make it work and use it for what it is. It's not professing to be to take over or to be your sole and only business channel or communicating with people. But it just needs to be acknowledged and supported.
How would you recommend social media companies and digital agencies work together, besides for actually merging with each other?
I think that specialist agencies, my first point is that I think that there is sufficient business to go around, and I do like playing nice. I think that specialist agencies are, as I say, building skill and IP, and that will add value. I think that social media specific agencies and agencies that are focusing on that will partner with other agencies to provide their service. So they might not merge, but they certainly do work collaboratively, in consortiums to provide the service that they do. Alternately, they might work with brands that are more niche or less mass, and they are there to service the brand directly and work very intimately with that brand.
My kind of final steering of the conversation would be, in the last year, let's say 2010, kind of everyone and their grandmother thought it would be cool to get into social media. And you've had a lot of these small consulting companies to do kind of basic social media. What would you recommend a client or a marketer to look out for when choosing a social media agency?
It would be very naive for a brand or a marketer to accept an agency that doesn't show them some sort of process, some sort of strategic thinking, that doesn't check the boxes. What you're looking for is a robust plan that has got different elements, and what I think that you need to be looking for is an agency, social media or otherwise, that makes you think about the things that you haven't thought about, and shows you their level of insight and their level of thinking. The fact that a lead can be generated or turned into a sale, and their approach to that, and how they intend to do that and help you achieve your business objectives, then that would be the agency to go for. It's, show them the meat. I think that there's a lot of waffle. I would look for credibility. I would look for case studies. I would look for, and case studies case studies don't have to be a viral once-off big hitter. Case studies can be a continual relationship where you've seen success, maybe on a smaller scale. Just because your video got X number of views doesn't mean that particular agency is brilliant at social media. It's one factor of your digital. Social media is one factor of your digital ecosystem, and I would look at how that agency builds it into your digital thinking, and building strategy. There's another native one for you, but strategy for the digital age. So there might be, in my opinion, the next iteration of adoption will come down to device and interaction with device, and that will be the next wave that informs how we interact with the digital world. So yeah, that's it.
Any closing thoughts?
No, I'm just excited. I'm excited for 2011. I think that 2010 has been a dog of a year. It's been exhausting and I think everyone's felt it. It's been exhausting, and I'm excited for the landscape changes, and also to see more, to see stuff, content, campaigns that are not necessarily making a noise, but really making a difference.
Thinking Native is a part of the Making of Native, a 4-month journey into the making of South Africa's newest full-service agency. For more insights with Native's leading thinkers, visit us on www.native.co today or follow us on @NativeSpeak.